Hi everyone. Sorry for the sound issue with the video. We have some small technical issues, but we are going to continue our presentation. So the agenda for today, you have to listen for us by 15 minutes. So we are going to present a couple of things. Then you have our second AMA that will be held between Nuno Paiva, André, Carreiro, and Bernardo Caldas. We'll present them briefly. And then you have a little bit of time for networking. As you should have listened from the video, if it had a sound, you will know that the SPT is an informal community that has the focus on sharing knowledge between all of the data scientists that exist in Portugal. Not only in Portugal, but mainly in Portugal. We are an informal community, meaning that we don't want to be a profit company. We just want to share knowledge and gather experience from other people and improve the field completely. Either you be in academia or in industry. Before presenting our speakers, or in our case, our guests that will reply to your questions, we want to make a call for proposals, meaning that you have any work, if you have done anything worthwhile in the machine learning or data science area, please fill out our form. You have the link here, and we'll evaluate our work and propose a meetup with your work. You can join us in any of our social media accounts. We are very active in Slack and Discord. So if you want to share with us or share with the community, if you have any questions, if you want to share anything, if you want to share an event, or if you want to gather events that you want to attend, please follow us in your social media. We want to a special thing for Farfetch and Luegan that are the sponsors of this meetup. They are the ones that make this event possible. Since this is Ask Me Anything, you have two types of interactions with our guests. You can raise your virtual hand, and the team will give you permission to activate the sound, and you can ask the question directly. You can write your question either in Slido or in the chat of WebEx if you are more shy, right? The Slido already has 18 questions. You can vote them because we are going to make the questions by order of votes. So if there is a question that you like, vote on it, and we are going to go by the questions by the order they are voted. If anyone raises their hand, they have priority, right? So the priority goes when someone raises their hand and want to make the question directly to the speakers. So without further delay, I want to present our three main guests. First off is Nuno Paiva, a lead data scientist team at NOS, and he is a PhD candidate for MAPI doctoral program in computer science focused in fairness in ML. Our second guest is André Carreiro. He's a senior researcher of Intelligent Systems Group at Fraunhofer, Portugal, and has a PhD in biomedical engineering from Técnico Lisboa. And our final guest, Bernardo Caldas, is a head of data science at Nubank and has won two major awards, Innovation in Big Data Award by Thomson Reuters and Machine Learning and Neural Computing Award by Imperial College of London. So the main topic for this AMA is managing data science teams during the pandemic. And the floor is from our guests and all of you, so they will be now available to answer your questions. If there is a brave soul here, please raise your hand. If not, I will share the slide and go by the questions by the order of votes. Whenever I have permission to share. Before sharing, I want to ask any brave soul, do you want to ask a question directly, either by chat or by raising your virtual hand and make it direct. Last chance. No? So I will share the questions. I hope everybody is seeing the questions right now. The top question made by Anonymous. I think Anonymous is our biggest fan of this kind of events. It's for all of the three participants. Regarding DS team leadership, what was the biggest challenge that you faced during the pandemic? Any of the three want to start with this question?
Should we go alphabetically? The first
So
one?
I can go if
Please go on.
no one offers. That's cool. Okay, so first of all, thank you very much for the invite. And I just want to say that for me it's also a learning opportunity to be here with my peers, André and Bernardo. And also to learn with myself because I spend so many hours doing what I do, and it's an opportunity to structure this and reflect a little bit about all the stuff that is asked on these interesting questions. So, regarding this question, the biggest challenge that you faced during the pandemic. So, regarding this, I relate quite a bit with a recent article that is on New York Times that is published by Adam Grant. I don't know if you know them, but he's an organizational psychologist and he's focused very much on motivation and meaning in daily life. And if you don't know him, please check his podcast, Work Life. It's quite great. And the article is about how peak happiness lies mostly in collective activity. This is this collective activity or this peak happiness is quite absent from our current lives at this time, fortunately. And so they did some research and they state that 3/4 of people found collective joy once a week, either talking with friends in coffee shops, concerts, yoga, but also in work, because we spend a lot of time in work activities and things such as small things such as a brainstorming session could be an opportunity where this peak of happiness also happens. So I think this is still a challenge. I didn't resolve this actually. It's not possible to do this well in Zoom calls since I think that there are innate social processes that require our, let's say, physical presence. And this doesn't mean that I mean, not having this doesn't mean that we are not productive. Actually, I think that the change to remote with a team was quite seamless. We were already using collaborative tools. We were already using Scrum rituals to stay synchronized and connected. And I think that doesn't mean also that people are unhappy working remote. I think remote has good features such as flexibility to better juggle our day-to-day routines. And I think that we are coming to a moment that hybrid model will be a new challenge and perhaps a solution at the same time. So I think the biggest challenge is this peak happiness that at least I'm missing with the team. That's my contribution for the question.
I would say that agreeing with most of the things he was saying. I think the major challenges that we had were not actually pandemic challenges, but remote work challenges, right? Because if we were already fully remote, then to some extent, some of these issues wouldn't have appeared. And just to give you just a brief correction, I'm no longer the head of data science at Nuno, so I'm starting something new. So the things I'm saying here are some of them about the job at Nuno, but also from other experiences. I would say that in terms of remote work challenges, finding ways of truly collaborating, not just being productive, but working as a team is a challenge. If you think about remote work as just a set of tasks that people fulfill individually, then you're losing the advantages of working as a team. That's really hard. So I think the two major challenges of making remote work for the past year or so are one, how to continue to work as a team, and being a team is not only working together, but also creating a sense of common culture. But also, how do you give context and how do you communicate with your team? So I would say that in my experience, to be able to do data science effectively, you need context. So it's not only a matter of getting a task and working on it. You need to understand what you're building, what's the actual purpose, how are the other teams reacting to your models and to your outputs. And some of that usually comes serendipitous. I would say that some of that happens by running into people in your corridors, by drinking coffee with someone. If you take that out, if you take that communication out, then people start to lose the context of the work they are doing. So I'd say that giving the right context, what's the purpose of the work you're doing, what's the output, what's happening, how are people reacting, needs to happen much more consciously. You can just hope that it happens. You have to think about how to give that context to the teams. And also the communication needs to switch from typical synchronous communication where you sit everyone together in a meeting room and talk to them. And you need to find ways of building a synchronous communication with them. So how do you talk to them in a way that they can pick up and work on it whenever it's helpful for them? Pandemic-wise, I'd say that the major challenge I faced was that people were actually more productive because they were working for longer hours, but that has a toll on how well you work as a data scientist. Because our work as data scientists requires creativity, requires you to think in new ways. So it's not only a matter of just working and working, you need to think about new ways to solve things. And if you are overworked and overstretched, that doesn't work so well. So I'd say that the major challenge was to get people to work less, to take more care of their rest and mental health, for them to have some spare space in their heads for thinking more and working less, if that makes any sense.
Okay, before I can contribute to the conversation, I also would like to thank the opportunity to be here and to discuss these important topics with all of you. Most have been said, but I was thinking on an analogy with survival skills. So the first things that we have to set up are the really necessary. So the infrastructure that all of us can go home and work from home and communicate with each other. And this all happened literally overnight. So one day we were all in the office, the other day we were all at home. And so these were the basic needs, as we used to say. And then comes the more intermediate needs. So how can we strategize about the projects? We do a lot of projects and proposals. So how do you communicate effectively? And so that was another major challenge that we have. And this was not overnight. So there was a slight learning curve that even communicating, Bernardo was saying, but even practical terms that we should like over button almost in the beginning, that we have to wait before the person ends speaking and starts speaking. There's no interruption. So there's an etiquette that we had to get used to in these types of conversations and interactions. And then if you think of it as Maslow pyramid, then we have what Nuno was saying, like the happiness and the informal meetings and all these meet cues that usually happen during the office day. And we try to, and this was a challenge, how to keep the team really motivated without stressing it out. Actually, at Fraunhofer, this was a record-breaking year in all sorts of fronts, but we tried to actively avoid this overwork, and especially because some people were saying, okay, this isn't remote work, but it wasn't remote work, because for most families with kids in their homes, this is not remote work. This is a thing that's somehow relates to remote work, but it's not really what the model of remote work should work in our heads. So I also agree with this longer term vision that we are headed towards a more hybrid approach. Of course, not all industries are capable of doing this, but as data scientists in the context that we usually work in, I think that this is feasible, and I think it will be more productive for all of us and for the organizations as well. So those are my 2 cents.
Okay, thank you for all of your insights. Before continuing, I want to ask again, is there any brave soul that wants to ask a question directly, you can either write it in the chat of the WebEx or raise your virtual hand, and the team that is managing the event will give you permission to speak. Right? They'll give you permission to speak. They'll not activate your mic. So the button that says unmute will become active. Is there anyone that wants to make a question? I'll give you a little bit of seconds to figure that out. And before going to the next question, I will present Mafalda, the second speaker, the second co-host. Which she wants to present herself and make the second question.
Hi, everyone. So, the next question is, what advice can you give to someone that wants to pursue a career in DS, lead or management? Who want to start?
Maybe wait Bernardo now, or me or myself?
Yeah, I can start now.
Okay.
I'd say that the first thing you have to think about is whether you actually want it. I'd say that we are too used to thinking of career progression as becoming a manager, and that doesn't have to be the case. And I strongly argue that we need to find a way, and there are tons of companies that do this really well, of finding ways of you increasing your contribution, increasing your impact without having to be a manager. Because the set of things that you do as a manager or as a lead are different than those that you do as an individual contributor. So the first advice would be, are you actually happy in managing or leading projects, or are you just trying to find a way to progress in your career, which is totally fine, but there are alternatives. I'd say that the major things that you need to do and that are different in terms of skill set are how much you interact with the outside world, the non-tech world. So other people that have no idea about how your models operate, of what data science is. They do not understand that, and your job is to manage them to some extent. How do you manage their expectations? How do you sell them your projects? How do you find interesting things to work on? So how do you communicate with stakeholders that have no idea of what data science or machine learning is? And that's a really interesting challenge. I love it, to be honest, but that's a huge part of your work. If you are to be successful in a company, especially in a larger company where you'll have tens of departments and people that could be your internal customers, but that have no idea of what you do. I also think you really need to learn how to embrace your own failure, because as a manager of people, you need to be managing other people's failure as well. And I'm sure you agree that in data science and machine learning, the majority of the things that you try don't work. So if you're testing new features for your model, if you're testing a new architecture for something, the majority of the times you'll fail. So I think you really need to start to be comfortable with that. If you're not personally, you need to get personally comfortable with that, because you'll be managing other people's failure and helping them develop. That's something that you need to develop yourself before becoming a manager, I'd say. Also, to be comfortable with people doing things in a different way than you do. So being a manager or a lead data scientist is not telling people what to do, is to help them navigate their solution space properly. So how do you sample the solution space effectively, but you're not telling them that the solution is there because you have no idea. The person doing the job is the one best equipped to solve it. So a manager in some other areas may be someone that directs. A manager in data science or machine learning is someone that helps you navigate the solution space, but without knowing where the solution lies. So you need to be comfortable with people disagreeing with you, trying different things, and you being corrected and wrong tons of times. And finally, I'd say to start thinking about how to measure the impact of your work. So as a manager or as a lead data scientist, you'll be asked to show how much impact your team is having. How do you measure the actual impact? And the majority of the times the answer isn't AUC or accuracy or precision or recall, most of the times the impact has to be measured in some other way that makes sense for the business. And that's something that usually we as data scientists do not have to care about individually, but someone that's leading a team and taking the team forward has to think about. So when you're developing your model, I think a good way to practice if you want to become a manager is to start thinking, how can I measure and maximize the impact of the work I'm doing so that I can demonstrate that I'm doing meaningful things for the company? I'll stop here.
Okay, so I'll follow this great couple of advices from Bernardo. Maybe I'll focus on the paths that I usually see on people getting here and to this kind of positions. So I'm not here in this position for long, but I've seen some people do it. And what I mostly see is people from practitioners, data scientists, getting up the ladder and start managing teams. This is what I mostly see, although we have some business schools even in Portugal that are offering some courses on how to do data science and data science management. But I believe that they have not yet reached the stage, and because this difference that Bernardo was talking about, because you need to be in the middle, you need to understand effectively both worlds. So I think it's easier for us to get a better sense of the domain, because someone that comes from the business, unless it's a single business, won't handle 100% also of the business, but you can handle better the solution space that Bernardo was talking. You know how to speak the lingo, you know what strategies might work or might fail beforehand. Of course, all models fail, just that some are useful. And this strategy, I think it comes easily for people who come from the technical background instead of the business one. So I would say that if you are a business major that wants to follow this because it's trendy and it's interesting, of course it's interesting, I would say that you better get your hands dirty and apply some stuff and get the sense, the gist of it, and how it usually works to some specific problems. If you are a data science currently and you think on moving forward, maybe you don't have to move up to a management position, and you still are progressing in your career, as Bernardo was saying, and it's totally legitimate, because I miss my coding times. I struggle to get a bit of action, so to say, and I got lost in this all managerial tasks. But if you want to do it, I guess it's even easier for you to handle first the technical knowledge and then being able to manage a team. And because if you are in close contact with the clients, you will know most of the things. This communication, interpreting, and explaining potentialities and limitations. You will know all of this, and then what is missing is the management, and actually you can get support for that. From these two paths, these are my advices.
Let me just strongly agree with André. I'm a really strong advocate of practitioners being managers and not like general managers that know how to manage everything, managing data science teams. I really don't believe in that. Maybe we'll get to a point where that works. I'm actually not sure that we'll ever get there. I'm not sure it's even good that it happens. I think that in order to manage properly data science teams, you need to be a data scientist or have been a data scientist. You need to be a data scientist in heart.
Yeah,
that's
a very challenging text, and depending on your context. And at some point, perhaps, I don't know if you're already doing a good job. It depends on how many persons you're managing, because at some point it doesn't. I think you probably would not scale. But it really depends on the context and the size of the teams and the setup. But I think it's kind of healthy that you feel this constant dilemma that you want to be a data scientist, but you are a manager, but you want to be a data scientist. So I think that it comes back to be in touch with technical stuff. Even if you don't do it in a daily basis, perhaps there are some periods that you can, put it on your calendar and be more hands-on with the team. It's not easy. So I think much has been said. Perhaps what I could add as an engineer is to talk about the process. So I think that if you really want to do that, and I think that that's a very difficult question. It was the first point on Bernardo's answer. I think you need really should reflect on that and ask help. Besides this talk, I think you should reach for more help. But if you want to do it, I think that then you should, set up a plan to meet this goal. And this goal is probably to, bullet which are the skills. I think they were said not in a very explicit way, but excellent communication skills, business mindset, strong organizational leadership skills. So these are kind of fluffy words, but then you need to see what's beneath. And so you should structure on your development personal plan these points. You should communicate this. That is something that you aspire to your manager or your data scientist lead. And then you should, pursue this on an everyday basis. So let's imagine that you're working in a team as an individual contributor. You'll probably have opportunities to develop some of these skills. For instance, when you're doing a code review and you're providing good feedback to your colleague, probably you're training this skill, which is provide good feedback to someone. And or when you are developing a colleague in a specific context where you excel, you're developing someone. It's probably is a lateral development, but is a skill that will emerge later on and will contribute to this plan that you have set up with your manager. So I would just say that. So in order to be consequential, and each day that passes counts for your objectives. Okay. That's my 2 cents.
Okay, thank you for your insights. I want to point out that we have now 21 questions, 20 after I remove this one. Before reading the next one, I want to ask Rajesh Tamang, sorry I've mispronounced it, if you want to make your question directly to the guests. The team can activate your mic if you want to ask them. I can read it if you are a little bit shy.
I think we have Guilherme. You can speak, Guilherme.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm here. Just a disclaimer: I'm a friend of Nuno's, so this is why I'm reaching in, because we've had this conversation. I would say several times around the choice between being a manager or being a data scientist, and how you have to make a choice between both options. And so I would just like to ask. Well, I know Nuno's opinion, so I know that one, but I'd like to ask the other two speakers. So basically, companies will have to make a choice, and will have to make way for people who want to be coders and not be managers. So that's pretty clear, because I've met people who are data scientists and just tell me, I don't want to manage people. I just want to keep doing what I'm doing, but I want to have a healthy outlook on life where I can make more money and get some material things which are also important. That's clear. But on the other side, my question is, when you mention that you have to go one way or the other, or if you go up the ladder, you're going to have different challenges and perhaps be, I would say, it was, if you read between the lines, to be a worse manager of people or something like that. You see that every day in other areas of, not normal, but in other areas of a company. Someone who's great technically, not a data scientist, but in anything. And if you don't work on leadership, then you also go up the ladder and you become a lousy people manager and you make people unhappy. So that happens in all areas and not just the area of data science. And from my experience with Nuno, he does a lot of work on making sure he has that in mind, and he cares for people, and he makes room for people to grow, even though he has this dichotomy between being a coder or being a manager. So my question is, on your experience, is this something that comes naturally? Is this something that you work on? Is this something you think the companies should solve, or is it up to the individual to solve?
Okay, maybe I can go first. I think there is and there should be an intentional way to handling this, because we're not all the same, and so we have to allow and to build the infrastructure in the organizational of the company to allow people to grow and progress without pushing them to management positions. Because yeah, we know we've all been there with the frustrated manager that doesn't handle his position well, and so we all know this, and so I guess it's a responsibility, because in the end you get the best people in the best positions, and that's what you want to be more productive as a company, right? And so I guess it's a responsibility also of the company to allow this infrastructure, these roles this progression to happen. But of course, you as a data scientist or a manager, you have to, on the one hand, if you are a practitioner, you have to make sure that you are heard of from the management side. And on the other side, if you are a manager, you have to make sure you hear the data science or your executors or coders, as you call it. And so I think their communication is key here, so that expectations are well managed for all parts intended, because in the end, we want people to be where they are most productive at. And so I guess it all falls down to the three roles. So all three roles have to be active in this. The company, the managers, and the coders have to be active in this progression, I guess.
Well, good question. I'd say that there's agreeing with André. So it has to be intentional, and there has to be an alternative. As you were saying, it's clear that we need to have paths for technical people. It's clear that not everyone wants to be a manager. It comes naturally. So how will you develop those skills if you just need to have them? I think that to some extent there are things that are natural. So it helps if you are an empathetic person that can relate to others, that likes to deal with people. And that's something that's hard to train, I'd say. You can, of course, you can improve on it, but you need to have a certain pleasure on being with people. But in terms of how do you provide feedback, how do you listen to others, how do you handle difference in people's behavior and so on, that's obviously trainable and learnable. And I think that to some extent, that's also part of your company's role to provide that to you, at least theoretically. If I look at my past experience, the leadership training courses that I've had, most of them, and apologies for being a bit cynical, aren't that interesting and don't train you that well. And so the majority of the times, the way to learn how to be a good manager is to learn from other good managers. To have a great boss is the best way of being a good boss. But that's something that's not scalable. So I still believe that there has to be a way of training those things and of teaching those things to people. So proper leadership training. I still haven't found a proper way of, in my experience, of doing that. But theoretically, yes, your company should help you progress if that's your objective, and if that's the company's objective, they should help you, should give you training. But you personally, if you want to do that, make sure to find good people that you trust and that you aspire to be similar to, so that you can learn from them. I think that's the best way. If that makes any sense.
Okay, thank you. I'm happy. Next question. You want to do your question, Rajiv? Rajiv? I don't know.
Please
Bernardo.
unmute Rajesh.
I think he's unmute now. You can speak.
Yeah, you are unmute. If you want, you can speak.
Yes.
No, you muted yourself. Can the organization can unmute it? Oh, so you are unmute now.
Yes.
Unfortunately, we are not hearing Rajesh. So maybe I will read the question.
Yes, we can read it.
Okay, I will read the question. If you cannot hear him, sorry for this. How is data science career in Portugal compared to other country counterparts in in Europe? Anyone wants to start with this?
I can give you some pointers from my past experience at Vodafone, where I was working with. So when I was a competitor to Nuno, in my past life, I was working in a central team that was working for the Eastern European countries. So we have data scientists spread across Europe, and maybe that's helpful. I'd say that the careers aren't that different. I'd say that the only thing that we see maybe in smaller countries like ours is that if the data science teams are smaller, then the progression is also more limited. If you start coming into places where you have data science teams with 10, 20, 30 people, then it becomes easier to speak about a career, to have more opportunities to have lead data scientists of teams, and then managers, and then directors, and so on and so forth. So I'd say that that's the major difference is how large the teams are in the country. That's related to the country size, obviously, but also to companies that are focused on data science. Thankfully, we have some of these companies in Portugal as well that have data science as their focus and as their core product. So they are able to have larger teams. In every other aspect, I'd say that it's really similar across the world. I'm not seeing any major differences in the career progression, in the things we're doing, in the roles, in the tech stack. It's all the same.
If I may, actually, I did some search, not really on the conditions of work, but the job openings, and I'm also include here the US and Asia and mostly China, and that's where the major differences are. If you look at Europe, within Europe, I didn't see that many difference. Maybe a blimp in UK and Germany, but it's expected given the size and a bit of France, but France has more of a niche in AI. But for example, regarding Spain and the difference in scale, we are I think we proportionally we are very good in relation to many other European countries regarding even the skill set and the talent and how we get there, because we have a strong community, and because we are small, we can also share more easily, and that's maybe a strong suit here in Portugal. But I would say that there's not also that much difference to other European countries. Maybe school-wise or courses, we came a bit late than the main countries, but we are picking up, and we still can see that many other countries, even Central European ones, or even those smaller, have yet to make way into this. So I guess we are still on time to catch up, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, much has been said. I think that this community is quite international, so we tend to read a lot. What is the career progression, because it's something really new. How the teams, how the different roles work together, and if you look at different blogs, books. I just read Jesse Anderson's book on data teams. So I think I can find the roles and the way that the team works together, and they are similar on what we are doing. I think that, picking up on what Bernardo said, I think if you want to find these differences, probably you will find differences in companies focused on data science, very technological companies, startups where a data scientist probably is playing a big piano, and companies more focused on research, companies which are industries that are doing their digital transformation. transformation like banking and telcos. And so I think probably you get a better answer if you look at these kind of different archetypes of companies and not so much differences between countries, I would say.
Okay, thank you for
you-
all of your insights. Sorry, can you hear me? Right?
Yes.
Oh. Again, I will ask, does anyone want to make a question directly to our guests? In the meantime, I will ask the top question right now. How do you manage the expectation of your stakeholders? What advices you have to deal with the inability of data science to deliver magic? I don't think this is in pandemic. I think this is in general, right?
Magic.
The pandemic in this context is not that relevant. How do you explain to your stakeholders that data science is not magic?
I can give it a go. So if I understood well, magic is something that doesn't exist. It's just an illusion. So I think we are not, in fact, magicians. I think one thing that you should do is managing the expectations better at the beginning. So a good inclusion process on earlier stages of the project is fundamental to discuss objectives, business drivers that explain some phenomena that you need to predict, and how we are going to do decisions and how we are going to evaluate those decisions. So if you do this well, this journey with your stakeholders, I think that they see at the end there's no Wizard of Oz behind the curtains. And what happens is that you created just a logical process that everyone can understand. And then you just organize that in areas of development with macro tasks, effort, and everyone should understand, should have a lingo in the project. So anyone can understand what you're doing and the decisions that you're doing as well. So the only magic that remains afterwards, I think it's the teamwork that you do after these sessions and a solid baseline of common understanding that will help you through the project. So that's the experience that I have. So very inclusive process, very logical, good communication. No magic here.
I really liked this question because it's clearly someone who has had the pleasure of handling in data science projects, and it's good. One thing that I usually hear is, "Oh, you do data science or AI? I have lots of data," and that always gives me some goosebumps on my skin because I know what comes next. And so one of the strategies that we end up doing now at Fraunhofer in most projects when it's possible is we start each new project with a machine learning workshop, like a 2-day workshop where you bring the persons or the team of the client that will work with us, and we try to just set up the ground communication as Nuno was saying. So everybody speaks the same lingo. We know they know what we mean when we say supervised. We know when we say we need annotated data, when we need labels, when we need to explore some patterns. So they all know that this isn't magic. So we open the curtain and we show them the little wizard. And I think that's a good strategy that has returned good results in the last couple of years. But I also agree with the communication is key. So there's some different ways to establish this groundwork on communication, but bringing them on board is very important to know that we are communicating well. And one other tip that I can give to data teams over there that will communicate with the client is if you think they have a straightforward idea on what the goal is, even so, ask them before you start the project to give you a CSV, a sample, like a couple of samples, because they know the pains that we'll have to go through integrating databases and connecting some things and others to get you this gem that is a data set or a set of samples. And so this also helps. So just to specify some strategy.
So I'm going to cheat, and I'm going to steal a comment here in the chat. I think that José Vieira really said it well. I think that managing expectations is not the first step. First step is is making sure that people understand what data science is to some extent. I'm not going to go into the discussion of what data science is, because that probably would take a single session just for that. But the majority of the time, you'll find that people have no idea of what you can do in your company. So it's not a matter of, well, yeah, sometimes they think they have huge amounts of data and it's a really scrappy Excel sheet that's impossible to work with. Sometimes it has like 100 lines and they think it's a lot. That's also true. But I think that the majority of the times they have no idea of what the process is. So what kinds of problems do we tackle? And the best way to solve this, yeah, it's data literacy. And the best way to solve this that I've seen in the past, actually it was in Vodafone Italy, where we conducted a workshop with managers and senior leadership, where we were playing with doing machine learning on a PowerPoint deck. So basically we had here are 10 customers, here are some characteristics of these customers. Who do you think which customers do you think will churn, for instance, or will upgrade their package or whatnot? And they'll have to choose and say, well, randomly, they would bet on some of them. And then you show them past examples. Well, here are 10 other customers. Now what's your bet? And they will try to find similarities. Well, it has a similar age, it has a similar number of calls, and they will try to build their model. And then we will build on that, and then in the end show a machine learning model working. But before that, they will try to develop a set of rules based on past data and past history in order to predict something. And that sort of process starts to get into their minds. So no one comes to you saying, well, I'm going to launch a new product tomorrow. Can you predict how many sales I'll have? You have no data for that. There's no way to predict that. Well, maybe there's a way. Maybe you can draw some similarities from past products. I'm not going to go into those details. But to some extent, making sure that your stakeholders understand what are your capabilities through examples and not through just telling them about structured data or whatnot. But letting them play with machine learning to some extent is really helpful. So take the magic out of it. Let them understand what your skills are, the kinds of problems that you can solve. And then obviously, as Nuno was saying, work with them, bring them along. Do not work on things for 3 months, and then get back to them. That's the recipe for disaster. So to some extent, take the magic out. Sometimes we play with magic as well. We really like the hype because it makes us seem interesting and powerful. So we play with being the magicians, but that obviously has some drawbacks, which is then people will be disappointed with the end result. So yeah, manage those expectations by setting them properly at the beginning, teach people how you can work. And then my final advice would be build a really simple baseline for every single project. As André was saying, get some simple data, create some simple business rules before you start building models, see if they work. Sometimes a simple heuristic will be awesome, and there is no need for a machine learning model. And that's the way to start seeing if your approach brings some value or if people will be disappointed, and then there's no way of trying to create magic where none exists. So be really realistic with your colleagues and believe in their intellectual ability to understand your work and the things that you can do.
Okay, thank you for all your insights. And special thing for José Nuno Vieira to giving the answer for Bernardo. Again, there is anyone that wants to make a question directly. If you are a little bit shy, remember that you can vote in the questions in Slido. So the order is changing as you vote. And we'll go through the questions as the number of votes that they have, right? I assume that we have a shy audience today, so please vote in the questions so we can make the most relevant questions for the audience today, because the questions have been steady at 20. Any question that you answer, at least one appears. So I think you have to start answering faster if you want to finish your questions today. So there is no speakers. Mafalda, please read the next one.
Next question. What are the top 3 skills that you consider more relevant in leadership?
Maybe in order to be faster, shall each of one choose one?
I agree with that.
Then go ahead and go.
Okay, I can start with one. For me, it's what differentiates a boss than a leader is the strategic vision. So you're as a leader, you are the captain of the ship, and so even if you need help to steering the wheel, you know the direction, where to go, how to avoid the icebergs. And so I think for me that's one of the most important. Of course, there are a lot of traits, so I leave them to Nuno and Bernardo, but I think one of them is the strategic vision.
Okay, good one. Want to go?
No, go ahead.
Okay, so I like this one, which is empathy. And why do I like this one? Because I think that data science is let's say, a transformative role in the companies. So a lot of functions will change with machine learning, artificial intelligence. And I think in order for that to be successful, you need to work with multiple roles, and you need to understand what they worry about. And I think empathy is a good tool because it allows me to imagine what they are feeling, what they are worried about, if I can put myself in their shoes. And if I can do that well done, then I can probably, that can contribute as well to strategic vision. Because if I need to deliver a product that is going to recommend something, perhaps I need to understand what is worrying the person that has that business responsibility. So I need to be, to simulate that person and come back again to, to my table and with the team design an interesting product together with that person. And I think empathy can unlock that value, and I think it's very powerful.
If my handwriting was any good, I would show you that I have here written strategic thinking and empathy as the final two. So, so I'm glad that I chose to just say one per person. I would say that the final one is communication, and I really think that we tend to think about communication as someone being interesting when they talk, or something that's obvious that everyone knows how to do. But clear and active communication is a skill. It's something that you have to train yourself on. So how do you make sure that, one, you understand what people are telling you? So how do you put yourselves in other people's shoes so that when someone asks you for something, you're not assuming things or thinking that you understand what they mean when you don't? So how do you understand if you have the proper context and ask if not? But also, how do you communicate clearly to people so that your ideas are well understood? So clear thinking, clear writing, clear speaking. Writing good emails is a really powerful skill. So emails that are actively actionable and that are understandable without balls of text or without just saying, okay, thanks. But being able to explain what you think and what you mean in a clear way makes your life so much easier, because it takes away misunderstandings, you telling the things people and then them getting angry back at you because they didn't understand what you were meaning. People working on things that weren't important because you didn't specify well enough what the objective was. All of those things that are connected to strategic thinking and communication, empathy and communication, all of them require you to be able to explain what's going on inside of your head in a clear and understandable way. So I'd say write a lot, read a lot. Reading is a really good way to structure the way that you communicate. And again, seeing other people communicate well and copying the things that they do well is one of the best ways.
Okay, thank you. I think Mo wants to talk. I think I send you the request.
Yes, can you hear me, guys?
Yes.
Perfectly.
Okay, perfect. So part of the leadership is motivating the people within the team. So usually when people go to the company, there could be like some fun time, there could be like some chats, and if like it's really tough, you could make like a day for the fun of the employees. But with what's happening, so how do you motivate the employees or the team of the data science, especially that there is a lot of stress on this team in this time? Thank you.
I would say that you need to cover the fundamentals. So it's a very knowledge-intensive profile, I would say, data scientist. So I think that you need to motivate them with a good learning opportunities, such as a good project, and a good project working with studying colleagues, and working on a technology that you are, learning. You're not working with legacy systems, but you have a highly efficient work environment. So I think that if the fundamentals are good, I think that you don't miss so much the sweets on the bar, or I would say the sliding stuff on the office, or the free coffee. But that's probably a very boring view. So I'll ask my colleagues what they think about this.
Okay, yeah, I also agree that a good match in the projects and the technologies that they love and they want to explore, even new ideas that come in, having the space to do that, it's also very good motivators. But during these times, we were very intentional on how to bridge this gap. And so we actually have, and still now, every Friday morning, we start with an informal meeting where everyone goes around and tells how they're doing, how their families are doing, how was their week. Where we actually do some peer pressure with each other to force us to do some exercise. And so, okay, you did this exercise today. For next week, I will do more than you. So there also these aspects. We have also explored some online tools like online escape rooms. We have also done some fun activities that, okay, we cannot do it in the park or in the office in the afternoon, but there are some other ways to engage in fun activities. And some of them, because of our profile, we like to solve puzzles, and so explore that and stay sharp in fun activities as well. But I guess both things work well. So keep them motivated by doing what they love every day, and then sparkle some fun stuff around.
Yeah, I think I'll have, now it's my turn to have a fluffy answer. And going back to Nuno's point about empathy, I think, well, different things motivate different people. And it's no different than when you were in the office. And sometimes we see, especially in startups, we see things like puzzle night with wine, those kinds of things that are awesome. I love them, but they don't work for everyone. Because some people would like to be with their families at night, and they don't want to be with your cool team. Some people love those fun activities, and you have to create them for them. So I think that in a way, the way to motivate people remotely is a bit more challenging, but it still has to come down to understanding what makes people thrive and be happy and be productive at work, and then find a way of doing those things in a different way, as André was saying. So yeah, if you like fun activities, you have to find a way of doing fun activities online, and you have some ways to do that. If informal communication and talking about your personal experiences is helpful, then yeah, by all means. At Novo Banco, we used to have our coffee breaks together in a Teams meeting. So we would all connect our cameras and for 15 minutes just drink coffee as we would if we were in the office. And that was really good for just sharing some jokes and peer pressuring as well, as André was saying. So all of those things work. But again, it's a matter of understanding what's helpful for each person. And sometimes the most motivating thing you can do is understanding each individual person's challenges. So during the pandemic, as I don't remember if it was André or Nuno saying, we had kids in our homes. It was chaotic, really hard to work. And the most motivational thing you could do to someone was saying, I understand what you're going through. Feel no pressure to be on time or to be in this meeting if you can skip it. Because I know that you will work whenever you can in the best way that you can. That's really motivating as well. So yeah, understand the person that you have in front of you, give them the right projects, and give them the right social activities as well that work for each single person.
Perfect. All of the answers sound interesting and like promising with different sides. Thank you, Nuno, André, and Bernardo. Thank you.
Thank you, Mo.
Pleasure.
Okay, thank you for your answers. As anyone want to gather other question, I will read the next one. I just want to point out that we are again at 20 mark of questions. So it's like you haven't answered anything. With remote work being the new normal, we have assisted a higher rotation on DS resources offshore. How have you done your DS, I assume, members in your teams?
For the sake of time, I would point to the previous answer. It's all about motivating people in the proper way. I think if you motivate them well, you'll lower attrition as well.
Yeah, I can go a bit further because with the example of Fraunhofer, we are non-profit and we follow, even though we are private, we follow the state charts on salary. So we cannot use money as a motivator. And so we have to do things like getting people to explore the technologies that they want, to be in interesting projects, applying them to real life, to have real impact, because I guess 99.9% of all that are here today and all that work with data science, all we want to do is to have our solutions being applied and have real impact. And so I see that's, as a recruiter, I can see that's what makes their eyes sparkle when we talk about interest projects and how they are being applied to improve quality of life, for example, or to solve a big problem in society or industry or something like that. So I would guess these motivators work much better than money itself.
Yeah, I can add also some things. I think that, I mean, you need to do this on a daily basis. So it shouldn't be a surprise that one day someone is leaving. So I think one way to do this, it's a very engineer way, is to, schedule a slot with the person in a recurrent way and hear what the person has to say, what he's worried about. It's a learning topic, it's a project that's not going well. As Bernardo was saying, they have different, pains or different, not pain, but it's something that they aspire. So, and I think they as we, because we also have this issue, we need to understand that something's on the way. So perhaps it's not tomorrow, but he's working on that with me. And I think this is very important before you lower your shields and you start hearing proposals and you start being interested on the market. Because as managers, we obviously cannot from one day to the other, just throw a shovel of money, because we have constraints, and we work on a company that operates and has budgets and all that. So money would not be a solution. It's not a good solution either. It should be something which is hygienic at the end. Okay, so what comes next is the interesting part. Said it.
Okay, thank you for all our replies. Moving on, I don't think we have any other attendee wanting to make a question, so we'll go on the slide ones. What are the roles that you have in your team? Anyone want to start?
Okay, I can go first, because I think my example will be the most different. We are Applied R&D Institute, and we have three major groups. So the Intelligent Systems Group, where I'm at, and then we have the Connected Things that works with the hardware and sensors and how to get the data. And then we have the Human-Centered Design, who brings the users, who do this co-design for the final solution. And so we have different roles for, even in the Intelligent Systems Group, we have experts in computer vision, in natural language processing, in signal and time series. So I would not say that we have the static data science guy or the data engineer. So we have all of these different expertise that are combined to build the best product in the end. So we have people developing the application, the connected things, using the models that we build in the intelligent systems group, driven by the requirements of the user research that the psychologists and sociologists draw up in the beginning of the project. And so there are a lot of different roles that come together in the end, I'd say.
Well, I can add something as well. If team by team you mean the team where the data scientists are included and working on a daily basis, that's one answer. If the team is the team that I'm responsible and I help, it's just data scientists. It's only data scientists. So it's very focused on data science, and so data science is a broad term, and I will not get into much of details, but I think that at March we have an extensive workshop talking about this. I think we look for someone that can create models, but also is very technically curious about infrastructure, operations, and wants to learn software engineering practices in order to be able to push code into production. So this is the kind of data scientist. Probably, sometimes there are people that call this a machine learning engineer. I don't know, or other names, but this is the role. Okay. So this role is working together with another role with the data engineer and with a product owner, and so they form, let's say, the minimal unit of a squad that is delivering a data product. So this is the kind of organization that typically exists on the squads where data scientists are, contributing. Okay.
Yeah. So I have to confess, I hate the machine learning roles or the data roles terminology. I think we haven't gotten to a point where we agree on what that means, but I'll try to say what are like the 4 roles that exist that make sense, even though right now in my new job I have none because I'm the only person right now doing this, so I have to be all of them. So I'd say that what we usually call the data analyst is someone that is proficient with data, knows how to build queries and to build analyses to kind of answer business questions. That it's a role where your main skills would be interacting with data that is sitting somewhere, the data warehouse or thing like that. A data scientist, to some extent, would be someone that is able to think about ways of using data to solve complex challenges. So not like what happened yesterday, but how do I use data to predict what this user is going to make? It's not only about predicting things, even though the majority of times it's about predicting something. It's not about describing. But if you think if you have the ability to have specific roles, even if someone has more than one role, the data scientist wouldn't be that focused on building good software or building reliable infrastructure. They would be thinking about how do you use advanced methods to solve a challenge that no one has solved before, at least in my context. So yeah, how do I build a new model to predict which customers will churn? Using the same example as before, is the work of a data scientist. He'll be exploring new data sources, he'll be exploring new types of models, new architectures, and so on to see which solutions work the best. Then the machine learning engineer would be much more focused on building proper software for model deployment. So how do I actually put these models into production? Again, I'm talking about roles, not talking about people, because I think it's really helpful to have multiple roles performed by the same person, especially if you have a smaller company. And finally, the data engineers who think about data infrastructure, data architectures, data pipelines. How do you move around data in a way that's reliable, in a way that you can detect when you have data quality issues? But not only about how do you dump data somewhere and then the data scientists or the machine learning engineers will work on it, but how do you build these pipelines from raw data into prediction or into recommendation or into model output that can be then integrated with the rest of your company and the rest of the systems is the work of the data engineer, moving data around in a manageable way. Again, multiple roles performed by the same person is really good. I agree with Nuno. My favorite role, and I think the most helpful one, is the data scientist with some machine learning engineer skills that can help them build proper software as well, and think about operations and not delegate that to someone else. So the people I work with usually are not only working with Jupyter notebooks, they have to learn how to work with a proper code base and run tests and write tests and so on. But I think these are different data roles that can be combined.
Actually, just to complement, there's a trendy concept which relates not just machine learning engineer, but machine learning operations, like the cross between DevOps and machine learning, which is now getting some traction. It's also interesting. And I agree with Bernardo with this. Even my personal experience when I was in a couple of startups, and I had to wear these different hats every day to get from one end to the spectrum to the other end in production. And so, but then when things get more structured and you get these more defined roles, you will see yourself maybe just wearing two hats or one hat at a time, and that has its pros and cons. So you get this lack of flexibility, but more expertise, of course.
Thank you for all your answers. I will invite Mafalo to make the next one.
Next question.
So let me just state something. We are closing to the, we are reaching the hour where we should stop, right? There are a lot of questions. So I'll invite everyone that is still present in this stream, that you can talk directly with the guests in the networking parts. If you had written any question that were not answered, you can ask them directly. Okay.
Mario, I think you need to read what Nuno Paiva.
I read it. I just choose to ignore it. Politely. Thank you for pointing that out.
You can pay him over it. Next question. What was the most important? No, it was wrong. Why seems to be only place or job ads for seniors in Portugal? Don't you see investment or training people as something worthwhile?
Well, you want to go first, André?
Okay, I can go.
You can go.
Okay, so this we have also been actively recruiting in the last months, and so for I think six or seven ML related positions, only one was for a senior position. So I guess this is not true for everyone, but I can see where you come from, and but of course training people, especially in these sort of areas, is worthwhile, and I think it's actually the best investment that we can do, because specific courses are still brand new. I guess Philip is only 2 months old. The data science course, we have one in technical in the faculty of Lisbon. There are others that I don't know yet about, but they are very new. And so one way to do it is to get people on board as soon as possible, as long as they have the commitment or a personal project or a passion for it, and then you can train it. There are a lot of tools that help you do this very easily, like TensorFlow or other, even from data analytics point of view, there are many different tools, open source, that you can use to train people. And I guess it's actually the best investment that you can do is to get them acquainted with your culture, your data science ways of doing things, because we all have different ways of setting up a pipeline. And so to get them as soon as possible, an investment, I think you will have the highest return on investment. Even for us, for example, we can get students when they are doing their master thesis, so we get them really, really soon. But other companies can also do this at this stage, and possibly you get to keep them to work with you after.
Yeah, of course, it's a good investment, always. I was trying to, to relate with these figures, but I don't have statistics. Perhaps it's a good project for the SPT, to structure how the market is. That will be a very interesting project. But I can say that at NOS, try to not do some publicity here, but at NOS we hired 2 data scientists with experience last year. But we also train 6 data scientists in our training technology program. And we also offer at least 4 data scientist internships with us. And so I think that the function is very specialized and it's a knowledge-intensive role. We need to tame a lot of fields. This takes time to develop, and the throughput of talent is not matching the demands of the market. And the market has projects to be done and things to do. So it's much more, not a question of easy, but if you put money on something that is already, matured on 2 years, perhaps it's also a good business. So at NOS, what I can say, we have a personal development plan set up, so we can grow each person in different domains of a role of a data scientist. And we talked about this today. It's not only a technical job; it has other things like communication, social skills, and so on. This goes for junior as well, and also for the seniors. I think that they have the responsibility to push the team forward. So they need their development should be to take the time also to learn how to teach the team and push the team forward. And I said that in a wider landscape, I think if you think about adoption of AI as an important role of making our economy more competitive, this will not be possible without talent. And so the organizations, I think, they need to be responsible. They need to train new talent, and either it's in the industry or academia, we need to do this. Okay.
Yeah. So I'm not going to argue that the investment in training isn't good. I think it's obviously good. But I think there's a reason for the majority of the ads being for senior people. And the thing is, as Nuno was saying, so these companies are starting to realize, either by themselves or with help from the major consultancies that sell them these huge projects about AI, machine learning, that they have interesting projects to tackle, but they don't know how to tackle them. So the best way to start tackling them is to get someone that has done it before. So these companies will all try to find, especially if they are starting, people that have done it before, because they have no idea of how to manage it by themselves. So that's the reason number one. If you want to tackle new projects, if you have someone that knows the drill, then it's easier to, or you have a higher chance of success. And we're still in a growing stage where you have tons of companies realizing that they have data and that they have challenges that could be solved with data. So the demand is only growing. So you're going to see more and more senior positions coming up. And the second thing is that even though we have good university courses or good alternatives online to learn machine learning and data science, I still think that data science, or to be a good data scientist, you have to be more like an apprentice with someone more senior than you. It's the best way to learn. It's really hard to learn how to be a data scientist just by doing courses online or doing courses in the university. For instance, even if you learn about model leakage, where you're using the information about the future in your models, how do you detect that? How do you understand where the leakage is coming from? Is taught from someone that has done a mistake before and then shows you where the mistake is. And yeah, I can write a blog post about that, and maybe someone learns anything from it. But the majority of the times, your proficiency and your seniority comes from learning from someone more senior than you. So you have to have these senior people spending time in your company teaching people, more junior people. And again, if you want to have, in the short term, that may seem less productive because the senior person could be coding all day or developing models all day. They are spending time mentoring people that maybe in years' time are going to work for someone else. So there is really tricky incentives where in order to progress, you need to train people, but training people also has risk. So yeah, I think for the next years, we'll continue to see this trend where there's a huge demand for senior people. If you don't have senior people, then you won't onboard as many junior people because you don't have anyone to mentor them. So it's kind of a chicken and the egg problem, where you don't have senior people if you don't hire them junior and train them up. So companies like Nuno's, like André, like those companies that have data science teams are really good places to start because you have more senior people that you can learn from, and hopefully they'll become senior and mentor more junior people. That's a really good way to contribute back to the data society at large. So thank you for that, for welcoming junior people.
Okay, thank you. Last question. What was the most important lesson learned as a leader? For example, something that didn't go so well as expected, and how did you overcome it? For final question, can you be quickly, not so long each other? 2 minutes.
So our final question, if you can answer quickly,
Oh,
we have to move to the networking part. If people are still interested and you are still available.
Yes. If not, Mario need to pay a dinner at Nuno Paiva.
This is a non-profit. I have to state this is a non-profit.
Italian for me.
Yeah, it's already past 8.
They are
There's
paying
no-
anything to be here.
I'm also good with Italian. So yeah, not going to try to answer the most important because I have no idea. Great lesson to learn. Do not underestimate people's intellectual ability. So always teach them the things that are interesting to you. That makes wonders in making sure that data science is used in your company.
Okay. Well, I have some ideas here, but I'll try to summarize them very quickly. So there are a lot of things that probably on data science teams they are taken for granted, but at least on the context that where I work, they were not. So things as an engineered environment, you do code reviews, pair programming, tests, requirements, very well written. A very, how can I say, parsimonious work environment where you're not being bothered with constant emails and Slack and someone tapping on the shoulder and all at the same time. So a lot of pain points that we had, and I think my lesson learned was do not assume that you cannot change something which is very big, but you need to do it, because if you don't do it, you are going to waste a big opportunity. So there's a hidden opportunity that is always there waiting for you to discuss about it tomorrow. And if you do that, and if you involve the team in an organic way, they will come together with you, that vision and the plan. And with that, you for sure you'll have management support to improve your setting. So just that would be my lesson learned, because I think that we are completely different from what we were a few years ago, and we had to push for that.
On my side, I completely agree. I will add one more, which is somehow related, but not on the intellectual side, but trust your team. So in what the pandemic showed us is that we can trust him to be responsible even when they are working on their own. So trusting the team is very important and you will see that you get more than what you asked for if you trust them. Responsibly, of course. And I would say that, and one of the other lessons is that you don't need to pass through some torments to learn. So you can learn from the mistakes of other people. So when you surround yourself with different teams, you can learn also from them, and it's also a good experience. So that the student network thing, it's not only on machine learning, it also helps on us humans as well.
Okay, thank you for our insights. That was our last question. There are still 16. We are sorry that we cannot answer all. We want to thank you three for being here and giving us a little bit of your time and expertise in these matters. We want to thank you, the audience that was here making the relevant questions so you can all improve. And I will stop sharing the questions. And we are all invited to the networking part of the event after Mafalda gives us our farewell and our remaining 5 slides, I think.
I don't have permission. But okay. No. You can see?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Great. We have a call for proposal. If you want to make one proposal for our webinar, tutorial, or a proposal of people to ask me anything, please do it. And I want to say thank you for all our speakers, Bernardo, André, Nuno, and our guests. Thank you. And this video will be available in our YouTube channel.
Thank you.
Cool.
Thank you.
Bye bye, guys.